to do this. For anybody who's just joining us, this is the SilmFilm Project Script Discussion Season 1, Episode 3. Basically what we're doing is we're discussing a theoretical adaptation of the Silmarillion to the screen in the form of a TV miniseries. I can definitely recommend that you check out mythgard.org and forums.signumuniversity.org. Those links will be in the notes underneath the video. And basically this is based on podcasts that are done bi-weekly by Professor Corey Elson and Trish Lambert and Dave Kale. That takes place every Friday at 10 a.m. All right. So basically we're working through the origin story of Melkor. We have managed to kind of generally plot out his first and second trips into the void. Do we need more than that? Becomes the question.
Well, is the episode going to be longer than 20 minutes? Because if so, yeah, we kind of need something more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, here's the question. At what point have we interrupted this to go back to the frame?
That's a good question.
That's why I asked it.
And the host didn't touch that, really, did they?
No, of course not.
No.
Okay.
The question,
I don't think they conceived of going back and forth from the frame.
right. What question would Estelle have at this point in the narrative that he could ask that would bring us back into the frame?
I mean, a natural question to ask would be like, what's the flame imperishable? But
Exactly.
if we ask that question, we kind of have to answer it. And I don't know that we are equipped to do so. So,
Well,
Well, we didn't want to put words in
I mean,
Elrond's mouth, so
the
letting Elrond answer.
the typical understanding of what the flame imperishable is that it's basically the Holy Spirit, that it is the source of all souls, basically the source of all spirit comes from the flame imperishable.
The most concrete example is that when Iluvatar shows the Aenar the vision at the end of the music, they see it hanging in the void. They see Arda. It's just a vision.
Yeah.
Then when Iluvatar says, Ea, let these things be, he sends the flame imperishable to it and makes it real. So the flame imperishable is the spark of creation that makes stuff out of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, well, it's kind of like in the book of Genesis where he says, and the earth was formless and void, and the Spirit of God hovered over the waters. It's kind of like that a little bit. Anyway,
but the ability, the thing that's specifically tied to the flame imperishable is making something out of nothing. So that's a big deal. You can't do that, and the Valar can't do that, which we'll come up with all of. But
they can transmute one type of stuff into another type of stuff. Right. They can manipulate stuff, but they can't just create matter.
Right. And that's what Melkor wants now. Melkor wants to be able to make his own stuff. Yeah. Right. And he can't.
Well, it's kind of like the old joke where the scientist goes to God and says, "Hey, God, just wanted to let you know we don't need you anymore here on Earth." And God says, "Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we have a man-making contest?" So the scientist reaches down, grabs a handful of dirt, and said, "Okay, let's get started." And God says, "No. Get your own dirt."
Right. Yes. So he's looking for dirt or the flame imperishable.
He's looking for the ability to make his own dirt.
The imperishable dirt in the void.
His own building materials, so he can make his own visions real. Because he should have visions at this point. Right. He should have all this stuff he wants to create and all this stuff he wants to do, and the timeless halls don't have it.
Iluvatar isn't taking any thought for the void. He wants to do stuff in the void.
Right. The timeless halls are not enough for him. They don't have all the stuff that he's thought of. He's thought of all these ideas.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe we could see a point where he's babbling on to Varda about, and I want to have this, and I want to make these things, and basically she's like, we're not there yet,
So who knows? To circle back, is this the question that Estelle will ask? Maybe.
Oh yeah. Well,
what is the flame imperishable?
Well, here's the thing. How do we? Because we need to get Gilrine in there, objecting to something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think she would object to a description of what the flame imperishable is.
Well, okay, so we can use that as the end of the lesson. Like, Elrond explains the flame imperishable and sends Estelle home. Estelle goes home and starts doing this introspective thing, and she's like, "You keep doing this. Yeah. How come every time you come back from your lessons, you're so quiet? What's going on?" Mm-hmm. And so we can have a scene at home with them that gets to it.
Right.
It's, however that plays out, sends Gilrine to Elrond.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe we cut back to the frame after. Because maybe he doesn't have to ask. Maybe he doesn't have to ask Elrond what the flame imperishable is, because Varda kind of explains it to Melkor a little bit. Like, as good an explanation as we're ever going to get anyway.
Yeah.
And that's the point where Elrond ends the lesson.
Okay.
For the day.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he sends them back to their apartment, guest house, wherever they are.
Mother-in-law suite.
He talks to Mom. Mom has a fit. Mom goes back to Elrond, either that day or the next day, with her concerns.
Mm-hmm. Right. I feel like we can let time pass, both in the frame and in the real story.
Right.
The timeless hall should be fairly timeless, and therefore no indication of how long has gone by.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So she goes to Elrond the next day, or whenever it is that she goes to him.
Mm-hmm. He
addresses her concerns, and then the next thing we have is him going into the rest of the story with Estelle.
So Ungoliant in the void now.
Yes.
Okay, so right after Gilrine's like, I'm not sure all this dark stuff is good, we have the story of Melkor and Ungoliant meeting in the void.
Yeah.
That's about as dark as this gets. So.
Yeah, and I mean, thinking back to little small version of myself reading about Ungoliant, and the part of the reason I love her so much is I remember that reaction to hearing about Ungoliant and this creature who nobody knows where she came from, and she's just insatiable, and she, that caught my attention and creeped me out incredibly. So if Estelle is creeped out or kind of just like quiet and down in the mouth, his mom's going to be concerned about that. And he's, why are you so serious? He's like, there's this creature, and mom might have some valid concerns about that.
Yeah, and Melkor might not be all that scary at this point because he hasn't done anything all that bad.
No.
So maybe up until this point, he's not really been concerned. But Ungoliant is scary.
Ungoliant is 85 times scarier than Melkor, no matter how you slice it. Like, she is way scarier than he is.
Yeah. I mean,
you can conceivably reason with Melkor and cut a deal with him. There's no, you run into Ungoliant and that's it. You're done.
Except never actually kills anybody.
Yeah, and I mean, I have several siblings that are significantly younger than myself, and I remember watching a black and white film with them about a submarine, and there's this scientist who experiments with this seaweed that comes to life and starts eating people, and it's very cheesy. It's like a ficus plant that shakes and people disappear into it. Yeah. But my younger siblings are about Estelle's age, had nightmares for weeks. It's not really about how it's just a story that he's telling. He's not showing him R-rated films with blood and gore everywhere. But that idea of something that just consumes everything and is frightening and you can't reason with it, it's a powerful one for a little kid, especially.
Yeah.
So maybe do the cut after he comes back from dealing with Ungoliant, like, or after he encounters Ungoliant, and then cut to the frame.
Yeah, because then there's a reason for Estelle to be withdrawn, whereas before that, there's not really. I mean,
well, that's what I was saying before. Like the story of Melkor in the Void.
It's not super scary. It's like once upon a time there was a guy at a party and he tried to kind of take over the conversation and it went really badly, so he went off on his own.
Yeah,
and it's not compelling.
It's not very impactful. Yeah. So, all right. So
it's
we
more
come
like
back to
a
the frame.
middle-aged nightmare than a 9-year-old one.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, because we kind of sympathize with Melkor at this point.
Right. Yeah, he hasn't set himself apart as being all that bad a guy, except for the whole interrupting the music thing, which just kind of makes him a jerk. Yeah. It's not really it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, up until this point, I would say up until the destruction of the lamps, he's just a bad person. You know, he's not evil. He's just a bad person. You know these people. We run into these people probably about twice a week, where this person's they're not a decent person who is looking out for the other guy.
Yeah.
But they're not out to get you per se. You know.
Right. Like not everyone is a saint and not everyone is a snake oil salesman. There's people who are kind of somewhere in between that they just aren't great people but aren't terrible people. They're just kind of people.
Yeah.
Like you don't turn your back on them, you don't trust them, but they're not going to actually do anything bad to you. They're not going to help you. If there's someone who's thrown under the bus, they'll throw you under the bus. But they're not going to like
setting Melkor up to be like a Dwight from The Office that at this point where he's not likable, but you don't hate him. He's a kind of a bad guy, but you know.
Well, and you know what? People like that character.
I know.
Yeah, but
this is just
people like a lot of bad guy characters. People love Draco Malfoy, and there's like nothing redeemable about Draco Malfoy because he's like a little jerk.
He is. He's just terrible.
So, I mean, if they can like Draco Malfoy, who's not even like bad guy, I don't know. Like, because there's some like people like Loki too, but Loki's played by Tom Hiddleston. So
that's true.
Yeah. Well, but Loki also has redeeming qualities. He's clever.
And you see that he's had a bad deal, that his father kind of sucks, like both of them do. I mean, you know, so he gets the worst parents ever award, and you don't feel bad for the guy, even if he is a bit of a maniac.
Right.
And so, on a superficial note, we're probably going to be casting Melkor as a fairly attractive.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna get an actor that's good looking. You know.
That was my point. That if you cast a good looking guy, people are gonna like Melkor, even if he acts like a complete.
He's misunderstood.
Right. He's just misunderstood.
Yeah.
My wife watched Gossip Girl for a horribly long period of time, and there was a character, and I can't even remember this guy's name, but he was a horrible person, and but she liked him. She thought, she was like, well, yeah, but when she's friends with people who look out for them, that buys him nothing to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
But.
So there's that.
Okay, so we go back to all right. I feel like prior to him coming back from dealing with Ungoliant, I feel like we have probably about a half hour's worth of television there. Followed by I mean, we could probably get another. There's another 15 minutes before we dip back into the story. 10 minutes. Let's say 10 minutes.
Well, the conversation between Gilrine and Elrond needs to cover a few points. So it can't be shorter than minutes because we have to end the lesson, have him go home, have her notice that he's quiet, withdrawn, have a conversation with him, then come back to Elrond, have a conversation with him. By the time you do all that, it is actually going to be 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So that means that we have 15, 20 minutes to deal with his past at Varda.
Yeah.
I think that as the last thing that we see in the story, in the Timeless Halls, is Melkor out in the void by himself, looking towards the Timeless Halls, which there's light in the Timeless Halls.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Because all the Ainur are there, Iluvatar himself is there, so there's light there. To have him looking back at that, and I feel like that kind of is going to be a call forward towards him standing looking at the light from the trees by himself, and then him standing on the Pelori looking down at it. He's up there. Is this before or after? No, it's before the destruction of the trees with Ungoliant by his side now.
Yes.
So I feel like it's going to call forward to those moments which we're going to see consistently appearing, to see him kind of out in the cold, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the conversation between him and Varda. He's trying to convince her to come out into the void with him.
Yeah.
He wants her companionship. He wants the safety of having another person there.
Yeah.
There's scary bits out there. Why did she turn him down?
She has no desire to leave Iluvatar.
Right, okay.
At this point. Because there's nothing out there for her. Because a lot of the Ainur all leave to go to Arda once it's created. So they're going to leave the Timeless Halls. But right now, there's no reason to leave.
Mm-hmm.
So what
we get the impression.
I'm sorry, we get the impression.
We get the impression that the light of the face of Iluvatar is her thing. This is sort of the key characteristic about Varda. So the idea of going off into nothingness to seek a different light would be alien to her, would be unappealing, or even just it wouldn't have occurred to her to want to do that. So for him to have that kind of manic gleam in his eye about there's a different there's a flame, there's a light that we can look for apart from Iluvatar, would probably send off some warning bells in her brain.
Right. Well, okay, so then why would she have any inclination to follow him initially then? Because we have to, if we're going to have both of those moments, we need to have some kind of defining thing that happens.
So at first, he doesn't invite her to come along.
Right.
At first, he's just talking about how he sees the void filled with things, all these ideas he has that haven't come to fruition yet. He wants this all to be. Yeah. And when he's talking like that, she's like, yes, that's what I want too. Just, I don't feel like
I want to make stuff too, yeah.
So on that, they're in agreement. And then when he starts saying, and if we can just find the spark of the flame imperishable out in the void and make this ourselves, as soon as he goes there, he's lost her. She's like, no, what I want is here.
And she says, no, the flame imperishable is with Iluvatar.
Right. And he has to be like, wait, what do you mean? Because he doesn't know that.
Yeah.
Because he's like, it's not here. I don't see it anywhere. And she says, no, it's with the Iluvatar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and even just some pretty subtle things about a change in the tone of the music as he's talking about these visions of glory that he has of things that haven't come into being. She can be buying into this idea and going, yeah, that sounds like a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the conversation switches more to, we can make it for ourselves if we find the flame imperishable, we don't need a Luvatar. He probably won't say that, but the music can shift tonally to give this clue to the audience of this was where he lost her and changed her
and you'll be able to see that
opinion or her persuasion.
And he loses her approval fairly permanently at that point. Like, she's going to be one of the most outspoken voices of, this guy's not going to change, and he's committed to a path that doesn't go with the Valar. Like, she's going to consistently say, this is going nowhere good, guys. And and we have to give her a reason. If she's going to be that adamant later on, we have to make it very clear in this conversation that she sees what he's all about, she gets it, and she totally rejects him. Poor guy.
Okay. Real quick, for anyone who's just coming in,